Good morning. I'm here to talk to you today about something I think is very important in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is teenage depression. I specialize in children and adolescents, and what I am seeing is a huge increase in depression with my teenagers. And generally, rule of thumb, when we talk about teenagers, it's 12 to 18. Sometimes it's a little younger, sometimes it's a little older. But when I say teenagers, 12 to 18, okay? Now, I'm not going to talk at all really about the anxiety that is going along with COVID-19. What I want to talk about is the isolation that's happening and how this is negatively impacting teenagers. So if you're a teenager or you're the parent or caregiver of a teenager and you think you might be struggling with depression, please pay close attention to this, and here's why. Besides depression being, really difficult and it can really affect your mood, teenagers who struggle with depression are 12 times more likely to engage in self-harm activities or suicidal behaviors. 12 times, which is 12 times too much. Okay? It's way too high of a statistic. So, this is why this is vitally important to understand what's going on and then ways we can support our teenagers. All right. Quick little bit that we need to talk about developmentally about teenagers. There are some milestones that are very normal and typical in teenage development that they need to check off, right? And some of these are increased socialization, figuring out their self-image and sense of self. Who am I? What am I here for? Those big questions. A need for privacy and a need for independence. Those are a couple of the milestones. Now, if you look at those four and how that relates to social connection or lack thereof, it's kind of easy to see why these shelter-at-home orders could be contributing to depression, right? Because a teenager wants to be independent. Well, how do teenagers become independent? They do things with their friends, away from their family, okay? And they can't do that right now. How do they gain a sense of self? They kind of study. They study their peers. They study Sally and Jane and John and Jimmy, and they're like, do I fit in there? Do I fit in there? Where do I fit in, right? So again, peers. I talked about independence, socialization, clearly. How do you work on socialization if you're not socializing with peers? How do you do that? And then a need for privacy, which sometimes might seem counterintuitive, but it's not, because it's this need for privacy away from family members, right? So they start to isolate from their families, but then they kind of glom onto their friends. So teenagers share a lot of private information with their friends. They don't share it with their family as much. So you can see how social isolation could cause this increase in depression. That's very important. The other thing that's very important to know is recognizing the signs of depression in teenagers, okay? It's a little different than depression in adults, but there's some overlap. So let's just talk about some brief kind of things to be aware of if you're a teenager or you're the parent of a teenager and if you're seeing any of these. So apathy, I don't care, whatever. Now, a lot of teenagers do that anyway. So I'm talking about if you're noticing a change, right? Like this is kind of like all of a sudden new. Please pay attention to it. So apathy is a big one. Lack of motivation. I don't want to do anything at all, even those things they used to like doing. So I'm not talking about schoolwork. I'm talking about activities they used to enjoy that they no longer enjoy. Changes in sleep and eating. Changes in sleep's a big one. I'm talking kids that are staying up 1, 2, 3 in the morning and sleeping all day long. And then we might see an increase or decrease in appetite. Very, very important. We might see just random crying fits, and there doesn't seem to be any reason, quote unquote, reason for the crying. You might see that. Irritability, kind of these big angry outbursts. That's another big one. Anxiety is a huge indicator of teenage depression. And one other one is kind of a preoccupation with death and or dying. So if you're noticing any of these, and these are kind of like changes from the norm for your kid, or you are a teenager and you're like, oh yeah, this is happening to me, be cognizant of it. It could be that you are struggling with depression. And also give yourself a little grace, because we're living in these really weird times, and it wouldn't be abnormal to have some of those feelings right now. But we do want to make sure that you're safe and you're getting the help that you need. which brings me to my next point. If you are a parent or caregiver of a teenager and you're like, oh my goodness, I think my kid maybe is depressed, couple things you can do. One, understand what they're going through. It might seem a little odd to you that like not being able to talk to their friends or see their friends is such a big deal. But again, going back to that developmental stage where they need that socialization, this is huge. This is huge, huge, huge for teenagers. So do your best to understand and empathize with them. Along that vein, generally I tell parents to limit electronics because there's tons of research on how awful extended periods of electronics are on developing brains, and your teenager's brain is still developing. Again, give them some grace. So they're going to want to Snap, they're going to want to Instagram, they're going to want to TikTok, they're going to want to text, they're going to want to FaceTime, they're going to want to maybe Google Hangouts, whatever. I'm sure I missed some. Give them some grace on that and let them connect with their friends that way. Caveat to that does not mean that they can spend 8, 9, or 10 hours a day playing Fortnite, Minecraft, Call of Duty, or whatever because they're online gaming with friends. I'm hearing that a lot too. There's a fine balance here, but give them some grace. Be reasonable in your expectations when it comes to social media, electronics, and connecting with friends. So that goes along with that empathy. Understand what's going on. Give them some grace. Allow them to connect with friends. Be as supportive as you possibly can. Encourage them to connect with friends. The other thing is lower your expectations right now. Generally, I don't say this, but I'm going to say it this time. This is a weird time and teenagers are really struggling right now. So let's get some reasonable expectations. Oftentimes when I'm talking to parents, they're having these really high expectations right now of their kids. Like, I expect my kid to be out of bed at 7. I expect them to do their online schoolwork from 8 until 3, and then I expect them to do all their chores, and then I expect them to come to family dinner, and then I expect them to get ready for bed. Unrealistic expectation right now. I don't know exactly your situation, but just kind of reevaluate and see where are your expectations. You know, expecting a kid to get up at 7 a.m. to start schoolwork is probably not going to happen. Being a little more reasonable, I expect you out of bed at 8, 8:30, and I expect you to get your schoolwork done before you get on electronics. That's totally fine. The same goes for having too low of expectations, right? Again, 8, 9, 10 hours on electronics, really not okay. Sleep is a big deal too. And often what I'm seeing is kids are going to bed with their cell phones or tablets and staying up till 2, 3, or 4 in the morning. Really an awful thing for their mental health. So, you can have the conversation with your teenager. They're trying to be more responsible and independent right now and say, hey, I know that this is a big deal for you. I'm trusting you with your cell phone. If, however, you can't put it away by whatever you decide, 10:30, 11:30, midnight, then you're going to have to leave it on the counter at night or something like that. So we want to be understanding. We want to adjust our expectations to fit what's going on. Let your kid know you're happy to talk to them about anything and that you're there for them, that you love them and that you support them. If you're still noticing some issues, seek therapy. We're all and at least in my state, in Wisconsin, we're all doing teletherapy. So seek a therapist for your kid and also for yourself. Take really good care of yourself. Make sure you're eating well, make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're exercising, and make sure you're managing your stress. If you're struggling with that, because that will help you be the best parent you can be, the best caregiver, if you're struggling with that, get help. Talk to a professional. There's tons of family counselors out there to help you help your kid. So those are some options. And then finally, you could definitely talk to your child's pediatrician if you are worried about that. So I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention that the rates of depression are skyrocketing. Social connection is so important. And I encourage you to be aware, monitor if you're a teenager, monitor yourself. If you're a parent or caregiver, monitor your teen. If you're noticing some of these red flags, step in early. Early intervention is going to help your child overcome this. Don't wait until they've had some sort of a suicide attempt or self-harm attempt. Please don't. And be mindful of the fact that they do need to connect with their peers. They do need to do that and encourage them to connect in really good, healthy ways. Okay? So that's what I have for you. If this video is helpful or you think it can help someone else, I encourage you to like and share it. Follow me on social media. I have Instagram and Facebook and of course YouTube. And then go out to my website because I'm going to be actually posting an article, a blog post that kind of goes more into depth about this and other ways you can help your child or yourself if you are struggling with depression right now, because we are in these unprecedented times. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to message below and I will get to you as soon as I can. Thanks, guys. Stay well and have a great day. See ya.